Welcome back to Introductory Akkadian, everyone. Today's class is going to be a continuation of our previous lesson on pronouns and the pronominal suffixes, except this time we're going to be focusing in on our final category, the genitive suffix, otherwise known as the possessive suffix. This is our fifth class introducing Akkadian language and grammar, so if you haven't already done so, do check out our previous videos so that you can be fully up to scratch and follow along smoothly as we progress through our ancient East Semitic grammar. So we have on the board here our genitive suffixes. As we spoke of before, these are attached to nouns and to prepositions, and we have different forms according to gender, number, and to person. As they're possessives, they are translated as my, your, his, her, their, etc. We have two separate forms for our first common singular suffix. We have a lengthened I vowel and we have the ya suffix. Now the choice between the two will be determined by how the word which they're suffixed to ends. If our word ends with a consonant, we'll select the lengthened I vowel, and if the word ends in a vowel, we will select the ya suffix. So there are various grammatical rules which determine how a possessive suffix can be attached to the noun. So we'll cover our formation first and foremost, and then we'll talk about some of the sound changes which accompany the possessive suffixes. So we have on the board here a table which demonstrates what needs to be omitted from a noun before a possessive suffix can be attached. And as you can see, the various omissions depend on the number of the noun as well as the case. One of the first things to note about this table is that the gender of the noun is irrelevant. The formation will be the same for masculine and singular. It is only determined by the number and by the case. So we're going to go through each of these instances with an example noun, kalbum, which is the noun for dog. So this is a nominative singular noun. And say, for example, we wanted to say my dog. According to our table, we would first strike off the mimation and the case vowel. So we would be left with just the stem, which is kalb. And as our stem ends in a consonant, we would select the first of the first common singular suffixes, the long I vowel. So this is kalbi, and this means my dog. Now say for instance we had a genitive noun. Perhaps the word was following a preposition like Anna. So now we have Anna kalbim. If we wanted to say for my dog, according to our table, we would strike off the mimation. So we were left with Anna kalbi, and then we would add, in this instance, our first common singular ya suffix, as we are left with our case vowel at the end here. So it would be Anna kalbiya, for my dog. Now there's one other thing to note here. Every time that we add a possessive suffix to a case vowel, our case vowel is lengthened. So instead of Anna kalbiya, it'll be Anna kalbiya with a lengthened I here. Moving on to our plural nouns, if we wanted to say your dogs, first of all we would start with our plural masculine noun in the nominative for dogs, kalbu. And according to our table, we strike off any mimation. In this instance, there is no mimation, so we don't need to do anything. And then we add our second masculine singular genitive suffix, ka. So we'd have kalbuka. This translates as your dogs. And finally, if we take an example of a dual noun, like the dual noun for eyes, this is our nominative nominative dual noun. In order to add a possessive suffix, according to our table, we get rid of the nonation, and then we add a possessive suffix to the case vowel. So inaka would be your eyes. Notice in the instance of the plural and of the dual nominal forms, our case vowel is already lengthened because of the plural or dual nature of the nominal form, so we don't need to lengthen it again. So in essence, the way that we form nouns with genitive suffixes is very regular. All that we're doing is getting rid of the mimation or nonation, sticking on our genitive suffix and lengthening the case vowel if needs be. The only time that this differentiates is when we have a singular nominative or accusative noun, in which case we need to get rid of the case vowel as well as the mimation and add the genitive suffix to the stem of the noun. Now that we've seen how our possessive suffixes attach to nouns, there is still a few grammatical points to cover regarding sound change and changes to the stem of the noun when the possessive suffixes are attached. So sometimes when we have a singular noun in either the nominative or the accusative, and we want to attach a possessive suffix. We are left with what we call a consonant cluster. A consonant cluster is where 3 or more consonants are together in sequence without any sort of dividing vowel. And Akkadian won't tolerate this for reasons which you're about to see, as these consonant clusters are basically impronounceable. So if we take a nominative singular noun, like libum, this is the noun for heart, and we wanted to say something like your heart, according to our table, we would get rid of our mimation and our case vowel. So we're left with just the stem, lib, and we would add, say, a second masculine singular possessive suffix, libka. Now this should mean your heart. However, what we're left with in the centre here are 3 consonants without any kind of dividing vowel. So we need to resolve this by inserting a helping vowel between the stem of the noun and the possessive suffix ending. So instead of libka, we would have libaka. Not to be confused, of course, with the accusative case vowel. The helping vowel is almost always a, and it will usually be inserted between the stem of the noun and the possessive suffix, but it can sometimes be inserted into the stem of the noun itself. And we can see this with our previous example, kalbum. So we wanted to say your dog, we get rid of our case vowel and mimation, and we insert our possessive suffix onto the end of the stem, which leaves us with kalbka, L, B and K all clustered together in the middle. So to resolve this, we need to insert our helping vowel A, but this time it's going to be put in between the final 2 consonants of our noun stem. So we have kalabka instead of kalbaka. So in terms of the helping vowel itself, this is almost always A. However, sometimes the helping vowel comes from the construct state form of the noun. Now, we haven't gone over the construct state yet. However, for the time being, it will be sufficient to think of the construct state as a form of the noun which is distinct from its basic state. So if we take an example noun like shiprum, this is the noun for work. If we wanted to say your work, we would get rid of our mimation and case vowel, and we want to add the possessive suffix ka. Now obviously we have prk clustered in the centre here, so we need to resolve this with a helping vowel. And instead of saying shiparka or shipraka, as you might expect, we take the construct state form of the noun, which is shapir, and then we add our possessive suffix. Shapirka. On to our next topic, I'd like to talk about a very specific type of sound change which occurs a lot in Akkadian, and this is when sibilants and dentals coalesce to form either a double S sound or a double Z sound in Old Babylonian. And this kind of sound change crops up all the time with our genitive suffixes because so many of them begin with the sheen letter that any time this comes into contact with a sibilant or a dental from a noun stem, the two are going to coalesce to form one of the 2 sound changes here. So let's look at an example phrase from Agushaya. We have la utar irasa. And this translates as she does not turn back her chest, or she doesn't retreat, essentially. So la is our negation of the verb, utar is the verb to retreat, and irasa is coming from a noun which means chest, and it is irtum. What's happened here is that we wanted to add a third feminine singular sha suffix to the noun. So as in accordance with our table, we got rid of the case vowel and mimation and we added the sha. Now we have 3 consonants clustered together here, so we needed to resolve this with a helping vowel, which would be the A, and it was inserted between the R and the T, the final 2 consonants of the noun stem. So now we have iratsha. Now unfortunately we can't have the T and the sheen together like this. It's going to form one of the 2 following sound changes. So we omit the T and the sheen and we are left with irasa. As you become more and more familiar with different kinds of nouns in Akkadian as your lexicon and vocabulary grows, you'll be able to spot where a noun ends and where the genitive suffix begins. You'll be able to distinguish between the 2 really easily and it won't be an issue for you anymore. However, it's a really good thing to be aware of at the moment because these sorts of sound changes are going to crop up all over the place. For our next piece, I wanted to talk very briefly about prepositions with genitive suffixes. So you can attach genitive suffixes to most prepositions. For example, if you wanted to say with her, you could take the preposition with, which is iti, and add the third feminine singular sha to form itisha, with her. And as per usual, our vowel before the possessive suffix will lengthen, itisha. This translates as with her, or if you wanted to take the preposition maha, which means in front of, you could say mahashu, which would be in front of him. The only prepositions which don't take a possessive suffix are ina and ana. These are your prepositions for to, toward, for, etc. You'll notice that when a possessive suffix is attached to a preposition, it no longer has a possessive meaning, so it's not being translated as my, her, etc. They're being translated more as objects, so with her, in front of him. Finally, before we move on to our cuneiform translation, I want to talk about two different categories of noun, triptotic nouns and nouns whose third root consonants are weak. And that's because these sorts of nouns form slightly differently with the possessive suffixes. So triptotic nouns tend to be short masculine nouns who retain their case vowel after the possessive suffix. And this is contrary to what we normally see, as the case vowel is usually omitted with the mimation. So if we take an example from a common triptotic noun, this is the noun for son, marum. And say, for example, we wanted to say his son, we would omit the mimation but keep the case vowel in this case and add our third masculine singular possessive, lengthen the case vowel, so we would have marushu, that's in the nominative. Now in the accusative we would have marashu with our accusative case vowel lengthened here, and the genitive would be marishu. So you can see that these nouns are declining as though there were no possessive suffixes there at all. And similarly with our third weak consonants, like the noun for prince, rabun, we can tell it's third weak because of the circumflex above the case vowel here. If we wanted to say his prince, we would get rid of the mimation, keep the case vowel because it is declining triptotically, and then we can add our third masculine singular possessive suffix, rubushu, that's the nominative, and rubashu would be the accusative, and rubaishu is the genitive. So there aren't that many triptotic nouns. Essentially, these are just words who retain their case vowel before the possessive suffix. And a lot of nouns which are triptotic tend to be quite common nouns, so it's a good thing to be aware of them because eventually you will stumble across them. Fantastic, well done for completing all grammar points regarding pronouns and pronominal suffixes over the past two classes. And the pronoun in Akkadian is an unsuspectingly broad topic, so you've done really well to cover all of the territory in just 2 lessons. So now we're going to take a look at some examples of the genitive suffix from the cuneiform. So starting from the top left-hand corner, gather together any notes that you have and we will see what we have on the board. So first of all we have ina, followed by the logogram uru, which in Akkadian is town, alun, followed by the phonogram shu. So if we were going to transcribe this sentence, we would have ina alishu, and our noun has gone into the genitive form because of the suffixed third masculine singular possessive. So this would translate as in his town. And for our second example, we start with 2 phonograms, a and sha, followed by 3 logograms. So we have saha. We separate our logograms in transliteration with a full stop, not with a hyphen. So we have saha, chi, and a. And then continuing on our third line, some more phonograms, bu, bu, us, un, and nu. So this sentence as a whole starts with the word asha, which is the word for where, followed by our logograms sahahia, and this in Akkadian would transcribe as epru, which is the noun for dust. And then babusunu is formed of a noun plus the third masculine plural possessive suffix shunu. So the original noun would have been babutum, and what's happened is that the T of the stem of the noun has contracted with the sheen of the third masculine plural suffix to form an S. So in transcription, our noun now looks like babusanu. And this is the noun for sustenance. So as a whole, this phrase will translate as where dust is their sustenance. And this is actually a phrase from the Descent of Ishtar. So on to our third example. We start with two logograms, E and Gal. And in Akkadian, this is the word for palace. And then following that, we have some more logograms, Kur, Nu, and Gi. This is the word for the netherworld. And then some phonograms on the next line. Li, Ich, Du, followed by Ina. And the final three are also phonograms, Pa, Ni, and Ka. So this is another phrase from the Descent of Ishtar, and we start with Egal, which is Ekalum in Akkadian, the word for palace, and Kunugi means the netherworld, so this is the palace of the netherworld. And then following we have a verbal form, Lichdu, which translates as rejoice, or may rejoice. And then we have Ina, which is our preposition, in, followed by Panika. So Panika is formed of the noun panum, which can mean face, or in this instance, presence, plus the second masculine singular suffix ka. So it would, in transcription, look like panika. It's in the genitive following the ina preposition. So as a whole, this phrase would translate as, may the palace of the netherworld rejoice in your presence. So that's everything for today's class, guys. Let me know if you have any questions about the lesson in the comments below, or if you have any questions about ancient Near Eastern language and grammar in general. I'll be more than happy to help. So until next time, thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you for next class.